Has the 4:1 Supreme Court judgment finally settled the political debate on demonetization in favor of the Modi government? To talk about this, I'm joined on this broadcast by Sanju Verma, national spokesperson of the BJP. Anshul Avijit is a spokesperson of the Congress. Subhash Chandra Garg is a well-known former finance secretary, has been involved with a lot of policy making and also with budget making, and has a good sense of the intention with which demonetization was introduced and the end consequence. For a contrarian perspective, I'm joined by Professor Arun Kumar, economist. He is at the Institute of Social Sciences. So I want to go across first and foremost to Subhash Chandra Garg, the former finance secretary. The Supreme Court judgment doesn't talk about the end outcome or objectives, whether they were achieved or not. It talks about how the intention seems to have been good and that there was adequate coordination between the RBI and the Modi government. The BJP using this to suggest that this is a political validation by the Supreme Court of the decision to demonetize. The opposition says cash in circulation today is actually more than it was at the time of demonetization, from about 16.41 trillion rupees in value at the end of 2022, 31.05 trillion rupees of banknotes were in circulation. So how in the world has demonetization been of any use? Has this debate finally been settled, or will it never be settled?
See, the Supreme Court has settled the legal question. The demonetization was constitutionally and legally valid. That has been held very clearly, 4-1 majority. It's a very sound majority. So this issue is settled to my mind. I don't think anybody will be able to raise the question about the legality. But the merit of the decision, whether it achieved its objectives or not, will remain an open question. The decision was to sort of eliminate black money, corruption, terrorism, fake currency notes, etc. These are the four major objectives mentioned. If you assess that what actually happened about these four objectives, you find that there was some positive impact about stopping terrorism. Fake note also got abolished, because when the main notes were demonetized, the fake notes cannot remain in circulation. But on the black money and corruption, I think the verdict is quite the contrary. As all the money, all the notes came, 99% of it, the cash which was supposed to be representing the black money did not sort of constitute the.
So let Sanju Verma respond to your opening argument that corruption and black money, which were the principal aims of introducing demonetization, remain as endemic as they were earlier. The Congress arguing that the Supreme Court verdict deals with a limited issue of the process of decision making, not with the outcomes. To say demonetization per se has been upheld by the Supreme Court is misleading and wrong. Sanju Verma.
Rahul, first and foremost, as Mr. Garg mentioned, the fact that the Supreme Court has today given a legitimacy to the entire process of demonetization by upholding via a 4:1 majority judgment, clearly saying that demonetization was constitutionally valid and it was the government's right within section 26(2) of the RBI Act to do what it did on the 8th of November 2016. The legitimacy debate surrounding demonetization is done and dusted. Now let's come to the debate about whether demonetization achieved the objectives that it had sought to achieve and which was spelled out. I will just very quickly tell you, A, recovery of black money via the income disclosure scheme. Was that achieved? Of course. 65,000 crores worth of black money, 53,000 crore worth of indirect taxes which were evaded, and 25,000 which was laundered and unaccounted for in foreign banks. So the total works out to 1.43 lakh crore. Second, I think the most important thing is, if you look at the RBI, press releases and the economic surveys of subsequent years, they clearly state that there was a reduction in counterfeit currency and fake currency notes to the tune of 57%, both for the 500 and 1000 rupee notes. Point number 3, did it enlarge the tax base? Because that is a huge achievement which is underrated. Don't forget, and I'm sure Mr. Garg can corroborate this, the number of tax assessees prior to demonetization, prior to 2016, was barely 3 crore. Today it stands at 8 crore. I'm not talking of taxpayers, I'm talking of tax assessees. Even for that matter, I think because of the fear of the rule of law, look at the indirect tax base. You know, the GST base today is about 1.5 crore people who pay this. And prior to this, indirect tax was paid by barely 60 or 65 lakh odd, entities. And the most important thing, I think, which nobody seems to be crediting the Modi government for, is the fact that the biggest spillover benefit, which I think even the government had not anticipated, is the unprecedented boost to digital India. Rahul, I will take just 10 seconds to tell you that even as recently as 1 month prior to demonetization, in October 2016, there were only 92,000 UPI trades worth 48 crore which were done. And do you know what is the data for December 2022? I'm giving you exact numbers. 782 crore, as in 7.82 billion UPI trades worth 12.
Okay, so let me go across to Anshul Abhijit, because one of the charges leveled by the opposition was that demonetization was a whimsical decision of the Modi government which lacked legitimacy, it lacked a legal foundation. What the Supreme Court verdict has done is at least given a legal stamp to the decision, accepting that there was a 6-month-long back and forth between the RBI and the government, and therefore that attack by the Congress and the others that this is a grossly illegal decision by the Prime Minister, that has now come out to be untrue according to the judgment of the Supreme Court.
Rahul, this is not an endorsement of demonetization itself. It is not about the merits, the wisdom or the intended outcomes or aims of demonetization at all. There is also a dissenting voice, which is a powerful one, which is also a compelling one, which gives out a warning, which we must pay heed to. It says that, the parliament was bypassed. We've been saying all along that there is an alarming overreach of executive power ever since this government came into power. There has been an over-centralization. There is no doubt in our mind, Rahul, that demonetization was the single biggest act of economic violence ever inflicted on this country, unmatched in its brutality and in its callousness. I mean, it led to widespread poverty, joblessness. The GDP of the country, which was 8.3 before, on the eve of demonetization, started tumbling very rapidly, precipitously. It came down to 3.7 just before the pandemic, and after that, it just went completely haywire. We have yet to recover from the effects of demonetization. All the cash, Rahul, which is 15.44 lakh crores, came back into the banking system. That means it was laundered back into the system. So all this bogey about black economy and the yes.
May I please come in?
Let me just complete.
Let him complete. Sanju, you spoke at length. Let Anshul complete.
Targets. See, all the intended targets, whether it was back money, whether it was a surgical strike on corruption, whether it was counterfeit currency. In fact, counterfeit currency in the last 1 year has increased by over 10%. 2,000 rupee notes, 500 rupees notes have been, actually fake notes are more in circulation now than they ever were before. So all the intended targets, digitization of the bogey must be dispelled. It was an afterthought when all the government's arguments failed. So they thought of something which they could have said. In fact, what demonetization along with GST did was, highlighted the digital divide in this country, where only a few people with connections, with money, with resources, who were tech savvy could benefit from.
But that's not true. Let's take, that's not true. That's actually incorrect.
So what
if you take UPI, or if you take
Giving
digital
gibberish on
payments,
national television,
with
stop
every
spewing gibberish on
pan
national
wala,
television.
chai wala, snacks wala, pakoda wala, they're all using digital payments, which earlier only people
You are
watching
living
India
in your
Today
la la
television
land.
and
Rahul.
coming from a certain socio-economic class could have thought that they'd be able to do. And therefore, Arun Kumar, the one very compelling argument being made by the government is that this has accelerated the pace of digitization in a way which simply wouldn't have happened in the absence of demonetization. And now with the Supreme Court backing the decision from a legal perspective, the government can say at least we did nothing wrong or illegal, which is what a lot of the opposition argument was based on.
So, my take is that, the demonetization was premised on the wrong assumption. It was assumed that black means cash. So if you squeeze out cash, the black economy would go. But the point is that black cash is less than 1% of the black wealth. And as we know, 99.3% came back. So we could not even squeeze out that 1% of the black wealth. And black income generation, which is based on under-invoicing and over-invoicing, that continued. Therefore, we neither could squeeze out the black cash, nor could we squeeze out the black income generation. And therefore, the process of black income generation has continued after that. Now, the argument about cash was actually a change in goalpost. It was on 23rd November that the argument was given that we should go in for less cash economy, and that's why demonetization was done. But the point is that cash is held for a variety of reasons. There's a precautionary motive, there is a speculative motive, etc. So today when the cash is very much increased as compared to then, it is because of the precautionary motive, the transaction motive and the speculative motive. And that's why you have 31 lakh crores of cash in hand with the public, whereas at that time you had only 16 lakh crores. And cash does not imply that corruption will be higher, because Japan has a higher cash to GDP ratio at 18%, whereas our cash GDP ratio then was 12%, and Nigeria has 1.4%. So can we say that Nigeria is more clean than India or Japan? And Sweden also has cash to GDP ratio of 1.4%. So this argument that cash, when it's squeezed out, will reduce corruption is not a correct argument.
Let Sanjeev Verma respond to this, that it's not just about whether you did the decision in a legal you took a decision in a legal fashion or not. We have to assess outcomes. The Supreme Court can't do it because it's an executive decision. They can't get into whether your outcome has been achieved or not. But in the public debate, the question is, did demonetization achieve its objective? Go to anyone trying to buy a house at this moment, say, can you complete a deal fully in white? The chances are most people will say no. The component of the black economy still remains alive and kicking in the Indian economic system. And therefore, to that extent, the likes of Arun Kumar will argue that your decision hasn't achieved its desired outcomes.
Rahul, I'm surprised that you have completely elaborated, with no offense to you, on what Professor Arun Kumar meant to say. But you need to correct the Congress spokesperson. These are the CSO numbers and you can have them checked by your team. He did not give the correct data. In financial year 2016-17, just immediately in the year in which demonetization was announced, in that financial year, the GDP growth was 8.2%. In financial year 2017-18, the GDP growth was 7.2%. In financial year 2018-19, the GDP growth was 6.1%. So please don't come here and, read numbers off your hat. Point number two. May I finish? May I finish, Rahul?
Madam,
You did not allow me to interrupt him. May I finish?
Okay, Sanjeev Verma, respond to my question.
Finish?
I'm making a very simple point. Ask anyone trying to buy a house or a shop or an office space. They will tell you on camera or off camera that the black money component is still alive. That hasn't gone out of the Indian system.
Rahul, I am responding to your question. Please bear with me. Let's be very clear that, in a country of 1.4 billion people, when you have a disruptive innovation like demonetization, the impact, has it been there in decent magnitude? Of course, yes. Is it sustainable? Yes. Earlier, the black money component, if that is the phrase you want to use, and let me borrow your phrase, that used to be anywhere between 30 to 40%. Most people who buy houses on EMIs do so by taking loans from banks or NBFCs. And let me tell you, when you take a loan to buy a house, when you take a mortgage, income component, and I say this with full responsibility.
But Sanju, anyone who buys a house knows there's a black component and a white component. Of course, on the white component there is no black money. In the cash component there is black money. That's just the way real estate deals happen, and that hasn't changed. That hasn't changed. Let me put that. No, one second. You can't get away. No, 1 second. You can't get away by trying to explain how houses are bought. Most people watching have a good sense of how houses are bought and sold. Let me put this question to Subhash Garg and get his sense on it. Now, one of the key tests is whether, for example, in high value transactions, the cash component comes down substantially relative to the base which is pre-demonetization. There is no study that's been done because it's all anecdotal. Nobody ever talks about how much black money they actually paid while buying a house. Do you think that percentage has come down? Sanju Verma argues that the percentage of black is actually coming down. Many real estate brokers will say, Jaisa tha vaisa hai. What's your broad sense of whether demonetization has enforced a higher level of wariness about trying to do something illegal?
See, there is very little connection between the existence of black money in the economy and the use of cash as the medium of exchange. The black money is generated by many other policy decisions. For example, when the income tax in the country was 99%, most of the corporates were invoicing and not filing any returns to declare profits. When the rates become reasonable, you find the corporates declaring the profits and all the transactions. Similarly, in the real estate sector also, over the years, the taxation regime, the RERA and many other things have happened which have made the many of transactions, the loans you mentioned, taking loans. So for that, the incidence of black money use or in the real estate transactions has also come down, especially for the primary and the first purchases. But the secondary purchases still has a lot of black money element. But
you make an important point. Let me put that question to Arun Kumar for his counter on this. Subhash Garg makes the argument, and this anecdotally from the experience of those who are buying and selling houses would tend to be true, that when you're buying directly from a builder, builders are now wary, not just because of demonetization, but because of the fact that builders are under greater scrutiny than earlier, because of a variety of factors. The component of black is coming down. They don't want to get their hands dirty. Net, there is a pivot towards more transparency, a pivot towards more formalized economy in the resale market, secondary sale market. That may not have happened to that extent, but in the primary sale market, the black component is definitely coming down. Professor Kumar, would you agree?
You know, that is actually anecdotal data, as you rightly put it. There is no systematic study as to how much it has come down or whether it has come down at all. And as you say, in the secondary market, perhaps it has even gone up in some cases that I have talked to some brokers as compared to earlier. And in the primary market, where people, are purchasing partly on the basis of white and partly on the basis of black, we don't have data on that. But the point I'd like to make is that black incomes are not generated in real estate; they're circulated in real estate. Real estate transactions are what are called transfer incomes rather than factor incomes, and transfer incomes are not counted in the GDP. Therefore, it is wrong to say that black incomes are generated; they're transferred. You generate black income somewhere and then you pay it. So therefore, the black income generation process is independent of the real estate black income generation in transactions.
But take, for example, GST collection, which seem to be suggesting, once again, Arun Kumar, a healthy positive trend line. Secondly, if you speak to those who are running small establishments, many of them now don't want to do the kind of double accounting that they were earlier, where there's a kacha book and a pakka book. They're just saying, let it just come into the accounts in the way that it is, or at least the amount of secondary bookkeeping that they're doing is actually coming down. They're not as comfortable as they were with maintaining two separate books of accounts, one kacha, one pakka.
GST is collected largely from the organized sector. As Arun Jaitley used to point out, that 5% units collect 95% of the tax and 95% collect 5%. So the buoyancy in GST is because of the organized sector doing very well, especially in the last 2 years, because the unorganized sector is going down. And secondly, because of inflation. A high inflation rate of above 10% means that your GST collections will go up. So therefore, basically what the GST is reflecting, what the high corporate tax collection is reflecting, what the high income tax collection is reflecting.
Sir, inflation is not 10%. Inflation is not 10%, sir. Inflation is 5.8%. Inflation today is 5.8%. Please do not quote wrong numbers. Inflation is 5.8%.
Please correct yourself. Please correct yourself.
Inflation is not 10%.
Okay. You made an important interjection. Let Arun let Professor Kumar complete. Go on, sir.
So, no, you don't seem to be interrupting anybody else.
I am. You're jumping in when he's speaking. I'm just saying, let him complete. I'm coming back to you in a moment, Sanju Verma. That's correct, which is why I allowed for that interjection, because that's a factual interjection. But let Arun Kumar complete. I'm coming to you in a moment.
So the inflation as WPI is what is relevant for the producers, CPI is relevant for the consumers, and therefore the WPI is relevant for the GST collections. That's why I'm referring to GST collection and WPI. Now the point I'm making is that the organized sector is doing very well, the unorganized sector is declining, and that's why you see buoyancy in GST, buoyancy in corporate tax collection and in the income tax collection. As the Prime Minister himself said, that effectively there are only 1.5 crore taxpayers in the country, and even though 8 crores are filing return, but large number, more than 4 crores are filing nil return, or 2 crores are filing very small return. So effectively you only have 1.5 crore, and those are the organized sector people with high incomes. So therefore it doesn't reflect the full health of the country when you say GST is going up and so on. So demonetization and this are not linked to each other.
Okay, let Sanju Verma respond to your larger point that demonetization hurt the unorganized sector of the economy, a hurt which they still haven't been able to recover fully from.
Okay, thank you, Rahul. With no offense to Professor Arun Kumar, let me tell you, sir, that the WPI latest number is 5.85% and the CPI is 5.88%. So, you trying to confuse the audience by saying that you were talking about WPI and CPI. Whatever you want to quote, it is in the region of 5.85 to 5.88, not 10%, so you stand corrected. Point number 2, and very importantly, Rahul, which nobody is talking of, and social media is full of this. Oh, cash with the public is 31 lakh crore, whereas in 2014 it was 17 lakh crore. In 2002 it was barely 3 lakh crore. When the economy expands, every parameter and metric in a growing economy expands. And I want to tell your audience with a small mathematical example. Total money supply, assume, is 10 rupees. Cash with the bank is 6 rupees. And cash with the bank is determined by the SLR, statutory liquidity ratio, cash reserve ratio, and other things. Now, if your cash with the bank mandated by the government, by the RBI, is on the higher side, say 6 rupees out of 10 rupees, the banks have to mandatorily keep a CRR and SLR. Then the cash with the public is only 10 rupees minus 6. That is 4 rupees. But assume that the money supply is 10 rupees, but the cash with the banks is only 3 rupees. Because the Modi government has lowered SLR. SLR 8 years, 9 years back used to be 23-25%. Today SLR is 18%. CRR continues to be 4.5%. And that is where it has been between 3 to 4.5%. Now 10 minus 3. Cash with the banks today mandated by the government, assume, is 3. 10 minus 3 is how much? 7 rupees. So basically, when banks are mandated to have less cash, then obviously the cash or currency in circulation automatically goes up. This has nothing to do with demonetization. Currency in circulation goes up when the RBI mandates the banks to have
Arun Kumar wants
cash
to come in
ratio
and make a quick interjection
SLR.
before I go across to the other guest. Professor Kumar.
Yeah, my quick interjection is that while the wholesale price index rate has come down, but the point is the average inflation rate for the last, 9 months has been above 10%. It was
average inflation of last 8 years is 4.9%. Let's talk about average inflation of last 8 years, sir. It is 4.9%.
I can't make out.
Okay, let him speak. Sanju Verma, you've just made an argument. Let's listen to his response.
Yeah, I couldn't hear what she was saying because the voice was breaking. But the point I'm making is that the GST collection rising at above 1.4 lakh crore for the last 9 months is a result of the fact that the inflation rate was rising at above 10% for the last 18 months. And therefore, it takes a while for things to slow down. It might seep into the prices a little later. But at the moment, the wholesale price index, especially relating to the consumer goods and especially to the manufacturing goods, that is still rising at a very fast clip. And that's why the GST collections are going up. So it's not just that, inflation rate has come down, etc., and therefore it's reflecting in the real production. If you look at the real production, then it should count the unorganized and the organized sector together. The unorganized sector data doesn't come for 5 years, and it hasn't been collected after 2015. So we are assuming that the organized sector and the unorganized sector are rising at the same rate. And the quarterly data only comes on the basis of about 300 to 400 corporate sector companies. So that only represents the organized sector. So GDP growth that is being reflected today is the organized sector growth rather than the unorganized sector. If we count the unorganized sector, then our rate of growth is much less than what is being proposed by the government at the moment using quarterly data.
Okay, I'm out of time. Sanju wants to make a quick counter before I wrap up. Please, Sanju.
Rahul, I think the biggest positive about demonetization is that it has led to financialization of household savings. I was surprised to note that today the size of India's mutual fund industry where small investors put money, I'm not talking of the big daddies, that is 41 lakh crore. Do you know 8 years back what was the size of our mutual fund industry? Less than 7 lakh crore. Thanks to demonetization, people don't put their money under pillowcases and in steel trunks. They put their money via SIPs into mutual funds, and if you can't see that, something is seriously wrong with you, Professor Kumar.
What you see ultimately is what you also want to see, because like was the case with cash in circulation, even the size of the mutual fund industry is growing. As the size of the economy grows, as more and more people take to retail investment and are going through the systematic investment plan route. This debate will probably never get settled. Those who, like Sanju Verma and others, want to see the good side of demonetization will find various reasons, including an increase in mutual fund investments and attribute it to demonetization. And those who don't want to see the good sides of demonetization will find reasons to find fault with the data sets that are put out. But what's clear, though, is that the Supreme Court has lent a certain legal legitimacy to the decision-making process and upheld that that wasn't illegal. And as far as outcomes are concerned, it really is about public opinion. It is about what you want to see. It cannot be settled ever in a court of law. So with that, I want to end this first debate of the new year, thanking all our guests. Subhash Chandra Garg, will be seeing a lot of him during the budget month. Anshul Avijit, Sanju Verma, thank you very much for joining us.